So as the streaming wars continue, ESPN find themselves in a very unique circumstance as their on-air personalities continue to flex their power in between negotiations, such as Stephen A. Smith, and also their main personality, their big star attraction, Pat McAfee, continues to flex his power while in a partnership with the network. But first, we're going to touch base on Stephen A. Smith. As we all know, he's currently in negotiations with ESPN, and they're about to launch their own direct-to-consumer app, their own streaming platform. So 2025 will be a big year for the network to see if they could survive and how well will they be able to compete with other streaming platforms. But when it comes to Stephen A. Smith, in recent years, he has been unapologetic of his value to the network and how he's going to approach coming into those negotiations. As he made an appearance on a random podcast talking about Bronny James's position with his father getting him into the league. And remember, the network that he works for is the main contributor in hyping up the image and the branding surrounding Bronny James. But let's take a look at Stephen A. Smith's tone as he's using this situation almost as a proxy, as a negotiation tactic that, hey, you guys need me going into streaming. Let's check it out.
Like, do you think they're kind of doing this as a favor?
But first of all, there's no question.
Yeah.
Let's cut the BS.
Sure.
There's no question there's a favor. Bronny James did not do what it took to earn a spot on an NBA roster. That's the bottom line.
Now, that's just one quick layer of Stephen A. Smith negotiating in public and flexing his power, his leverage, the fact that ESPN is entering into a world of streaming that's more personality driven. So they're slowly converting their talent pool from just being a bunch of workers to guys that are more talent based and who already have an audience. That's why Pat McAfee's deal is so important. He brings in that audience into ESPN, and so they're in a partnership. And Stephen A. Smith is also trying to prove his value, going out, starting up his own network. And now, because all the years and sweat equity that he already put into the company, he now has no issue in stating and flexing his value to the network. But also in the second instance, Stephen A. Smith ratchets it up one other level by calling out an NFL organization, specifically their ownership, when it comes to how bad their team is performing. And keep in mind, ESPN is in a major partnership with the NFL. It's rare that you see them even criticize ownership to the degree that Stephen A. Smith is about to here. But before we get to the soundbite, just want to add a bit more context, because ESPN years ago, in the early 2000s, tried to get into the content business by starting up a drama series called Playmakers, in which they show all the behind the scenes of what's going on with the NFL team. It was a fictional story, but the way the drama series was depicted, it definitely mirrored real life of what goes on with these sports franchises. You got the star running back having a drug problem. He had to inject urine into his private area just to pass a piss test. You had another star running back having outside children. All kinds of drama that kind of mirrored what could possibly be happening behind the scenes with these NFL teams. And the series was so successful that ESPN canceled it after one season. And it's because the NFL let them know, and this is the word around the campfire, that if they ever aired another episode of that series, they'll never see another NFL game on their network. So keep in mind, the NFL and ESPN is under a major partnership, and ESPN has kowtowed to the NFL many a times. They stopped all their reporting about CTE and any after effects about playing football just to please the NFL. And we've seen how the NFL operated a few years after that series Playmakers made its debut on ESPN. They gave them the worst Monday Night Football games. So ESPN is very conscious of their relationship with the NFL. So watch Stephen A. Smith knowing right here that his network is about to enter streaming, and they're going to need great on-air personalities who can bring in an audience. And he's trying to prove his value right here, but he's flexing his muscle. You guys check it out.
Because this is a performance-based business. Nobody's talking about your personal life. Nobody's gotten into anything. Your performance was put on public display, and you were 20 games under 500. You have been abhorrent. You have been awful. as the quarterback for the New York Giants, and on top of it all, they let go of Saquon Barkley to make sure they took care of you. They gave you the bag instead of him, which is another blemish. But here's the biggest thing, and I'm going to end it by saying this. The New York Giants, respectfully, shut the hell up. Y'all are awful as an organization. You won a Super Bowl in 2007. You won a Super Bowl in 2011. Outside of that, since 2011, the Giants have made, that's 13 years, the Giants have made the playoffs twice. They've won one playoff game. And you got the nerve to sit up there and put on and call the officers and complain to executives about somebody that went on national television to do their job. Why don't you do your damn job as an organization? Y'all are sorry.
Agreed.
Y'all are pathetic. The only reason why you get away with it is because the Jets have been worse. Because they ain't make the damn playoffs since 2010. And you got the nerve to sit up there and call the network because you want to whine and moan about your ineptitude being put on public display. Well, maybe if you let people watch it for free and then charge them for coming to watch your sorry asses, maybe you would have been in a position to say something. But you didn't. Go to break. They ain't worth another syllable. Go to
Oh man, Stephen A. Smith is he may have barked up the wrong tree right here. Cause the NFL, man, being an NFL owner in this country is almost like being anointed king. It's the closest thing. But once again, Stephen A. Smith is negotiating in public right here. That relationship between ESPN and the NFL is major. And ESPN knows the NFL is very sensitive about their shit. But sometimes in negotiations, things are not just about money. It's also about the power that's going to be given. We've seen Stephen A. Smith in his last deal work a lot more shows and at the same time become the face of the network. But when his co-hosts feel offended about something he said, we've seen him get suspended. But his peers, like Colin Cowherd, can go to FS1 and start up his own network and actually open up different shows and put people in positions to work those shows. A power that Stephen A. Smith clearly didn't have, as he's expressed over the years that he was trying to get the network to let go of Max Kellerman, and that alone was a fight. And Stephen A. is definitely looking at this, especially after that Dana White incident where the man was clearly caught on camera smacking the shit out of his wife. But yet ESPN, because they're in a UFC partnership, kept quiet about it. But Stephen A. Smith could be number one for 10 plus years, and his co-host feels offended by something he said, and yet that causes him to get suspended and having to issue a public apology. So the deal he might be looking for will not just be about the money. And this is where we insert the personality of Pat McAfee. Make no mistake about it, Stephen A. Smith loves pocket watching. And the fact that Pat is in a partnership with the network, he doesn't have to kowtow to any middle management and their rules. He speaks directly to the people that's running the show, and he lets it be known his value. But once again, that puts ESPN in a very tricky spot, because Pat, being in that partnership, understands his leverage over ESPN as they enter streaming. They definitely do need him as he brings in an audience into that network. But watch him live on air flex that power and leverage over the network as he criticizes the way that they handle how they get content out involving him on their social media accounts. You guys check it out.
Games are happening. So I go to X. I'm like, all right, what's going on? Well, let me go to the college football account. This should have me.
They'll tell me.
Nothing. Not a single activity. So then I'm like, well, why would that be the case? So then ESPN's actual account puts out the list, puts out the whole thing. I'm like, thank you, ESPN account. But shouldn't the college football account be doing that? Shouldn't that be something?
Think. Yeah, definitely.
Shouldn't that be just like a one-stop shop for everything that's going on, especially in this brand new time? You would think it would be the case. So hopefully that takes place. I think the people running that have no idea what they're doing.
Sure.
But hopefully, inevitably, that'll change.
Or even like highlights. I'm watching a big college game on ESPN. You watch NFL games, you watch NBA, you watch, as soon as something happens, touchdown happens, sack, interception, I can go right to the account, see it, maybe post it myself. None of it.
What about the storylines, too? Like storylines like, hey, Georgia, this is a must-win game.
Yeah.
You would think maybe... No, nothing.
What the hell are they doing?
I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. It's 3 million followers, too. That's a pretty big...
That's a big
massive.
It's pretty big. At some point, it had to have something, right? Because people don't just follow that for no reason.
I mean, nobody's probably on X. Who's using X these days?
Yeah, I guess that's...
Dying platform.
Oh, yeah, I remember that a couple years ago. I was giving a full speech by somebody at ESPN about how we're not using Twitter anymore. Okay? Nobody's on it. And they started putting these numbers up. Look how many people are on YouTube. I'm like, well, you can't just take every Google search number and put that in there. Yep, that's who's on it.
Yes, you can.
Look how many people are on Facebook and Instagram. Okay, so every human that has an account, okay, you're going to compete that against Twitter, of course. And then look at TikTok's rise, and look how many little. And Elon bought it. This thing ain't even going to exist on Monday, so don't even do it. It's like, did that one win the presidency? Did this one over here? Did this one? Does this one kind of have a little bit of say, maybe? And do people get all their news from this particular app? I think so. So maybe a little bit more of activity there from ESPN, especially if you're going to own all the rights
Yeah.
to the playoffs.
All the biggest games.
If you're going to spend billions of dollars on this brand new playoff, maybe there should be a vehicle of information on your phone that people can just go to very easily and see it all. But what will we know?
Now, once again, ESPN, they're in a compromising position right now. They do not have the leverage entering into 2025, launching that app, that ESPN app, to not have these major personalities in them. And these guys are definitely flexing their power. And interesting enough, the politicizing of these social media applications, labeling Twitter a pro-Trump and a pro-Elon platform, they do not have the power and leverage to tie Pat McAfee into that. We've seen after the election, there's been an attempt to blackball Twitter and to make Blue Sky the new Twitter platform, as all writers and people that are working at these major networks that were on Kamala's side tried to get fans to leave the platform, as well as numerous celebrities we've seen leave the platform since. But Pat McAfee cannot be tied into that. He understands where the audience is at, and he's not going to be tied down to some ideology from the network, because at the end of the day, he's not an employee. He's a partner. Once again, these guys have no problem flexing their power on ESPN airwaves. That's how much the network has lost their leverage heading into streaming, as the business now is more personality driven. It's not necessarily about a network anymore. It's crazy how the landscape changes, and now ESPN find themselves almost in no man's land trying to pick a side. But we'll see how it plays out. 2025 is going to be a big year for the network, and they're put in a very interesting spot with Stephen A. Smith calling out the Giants ownership, which they have major relationships with the network. And he even called them out about calling the network. Like, this is how much the personalities have obtained a new level of power. And we're watching this play out in real time.